like a face breast.
Welcome to Dave's Take. Today we are talking about Mean Girls, the musical remake of the 2004 comedy classic. Katie Heron is a hit with the Plastics, an A-list girl clique at her new school when she makes the mistake of falling for Aaron Samuels, the ex-boyfriend of Alpha Plastic Regina George. Before I get to the review, I just want to talk about my sweater that my girlfriend made me. I love it. She's the best. She's so supportive, and she's a marketing genius. Brand awareness. She knows all about it. Thank you. I love it so much. This film is very interesting to me because it sort of came out of nowhere. I feel like I didn't see really any marketing behind this film until about a month ago, maybe 2 months ago. And yeah, that could have been because of the strikes, but this sort of came out of nowhere. I had no idea that they were making a remake of Mean Girls. And not just a remake, this is a musical remake. This is really a remake of the Broadway musical remake of Mean Girls. So there's a lot going on with this film. And this film definitely had my curiosity because I love the original Mean Girls. That is a comedy that is timeless. It's a classic, it's hilarious, and it still holds up today. So I was intrigued to see this musical twist on the original film, and I will say Mean Girls 2024 is pretty solid, and it's a pretty fun time. Whenever you make a remake like this, the biggest question you should ask yourself, if you're a filmmaker or someone watching the film, does the film justify its existence? And I think for Mean Girls 2024, it does for the most part. And that has to do with the musical twist on the story. If you've been following my channel or know me personally, you know I love musicals. I love movies that are musicals. I love Broadway musicals. Sometimes musicals just elevate the story, elevate the experience, and it's just a lot of fun. What I really enjoyed about this music in this film is it feels like a love letter to the original story. There's a lot of nods and references from the original film in these musical numbers, but they don't feel like copy and paste. They have their own twist on it that it almost feels like a love letter to that original film. And yes, there are parts that feel like member berries. It feels like, hey, you remember this reference? Remember this line from the movie? How could you forget? It's a classic. And normally I would resent that, but weirdly, since this is a straight remake and it's a musical, it almost owns that. It almost knows that it's doing that, and it makes the film feel more fun. And it's not just a musical twist I like they did with the original story. I like how it feels a little updated. Like, social media is a big part about this film. And yes, if you're in high school and you're a bully, obviously social media is going to be a big part of that. And I liked how they implemented it in this film. But not all of it works though, because there are parts of this film that do feel pretty hollow, and it is relying on that nostalgia from the original film. Those parts of the film feel like this was supposed to be a straight to streaming release, and I did a little bit of research, and that was the case. This film was supposed to be on Paramount Plus, but back in September, they decided to make this a theatrical release. Probably a smart move because this movie's probably gonna make a fuck ton of money. But I can't help myself. There are parts of this film that do feel like this was supposed to go straight to streaming. I first want to talk about performances, and there are two that really stuck out to me. First is Rapp. I thought she was great here. I read that she was part of the original Broadway musical, and it really shows here. She's great as Regina George. She does her own little twist on it. She sings her own songs, and I really thought she did a great job here. Another performance I really liked was Alili Carvalho. She was amazing here. She was probably the biggest surprise of the film, and honestly, I didn't know this till afterwards. She was the voice of Moana. No shit, she's gonna kill it. Seriously though, even though when she wasn't singing, she gave a great performance. She's probably my favorite performance in the film. And yeah, no shit, when she was singing, she absolutely killed it. And there's some people that reprise their roles. Tina Fey, Tim Meadows, they do a good job too. And I'll say for the most part, I really enjoyed most of the performances. But when you make a remake like this, it's hard not to compare it to the original film. And there are some performances in the original film that I think really elevated some of the stories and jokes. And there's some performances in this new remake that I just didn't think was the case. And I guess another point I want to make about this film is it does feel like that love letter to the original film, and that's definitely what they're going for. But as it stands on its own, I feel like it wouldn't really work as well. Like, if you've never seen the Mean Girls film from 2004 and you see this for the first time, I don't think you'll be blown away by this film. This film is definitely elevated by the fact that this is a remake of a comedy classic. And another reason why I feel like that is this film just isn't as funny as the original. The original is a comedy classic, and the comedy really elevates that story. And don't get me wrong, I still think Mean Girls 2024 is still pretty funny. but it feels like the comedy is kind of replaced by some of these musical numbers. And that's why I feel like overall there are a lot of parts of this film that work for me when it comes to remaking the story and giving it a musical twist, more of a musical love letter to the original story. But I can't lie, there are parts of the film that do feel a little hollow because the storytelling and the comedy isn't as strong as the original film. But to answer the original question, does this film justify its existence? I think it does. It has a musical twist that makes the film feel refreshing. Obviously, it was never going to be as good as the original film, and I think seeing the original film definitely elevates the experience here. But if you're a big fan of the original, I think you'll have a fun time with this film. I'm going to give Mean Girls 2024 6 Davey Daves. Yeah, overall the film was a solid time. It wasn't perfect, but honestly, like I said, if you're a big fan of that original film, you're going to have some enjoyment here. But if you have never seen the original film, you might be like, what the fuck? So, Mean Girls 2024. Let me know what you guys thought of it once you've seen it. I'm curious to hear. And thank you so much for watching. Click here to see more of Dave's Takes.